Tommy, let's take a look at something a little bit on the lighter side,
Yes.
especially when we're looking at landlord. How do renewables fit into the landlord's challenge?
Okay. So interestingly enough, obviously renewables can be used as a cost-cutting initiative. And landlords know this and they've implemented it at some of their centers. And we see a lot of malls and centers with panels. But it's only cost-cutting initiative. It doesn't eliminate the high prices. And unfortunately, due to the tariff structures, they're always bound to the resale law and the way that electricity must be resold in the country. And that puts it at quite a difficult position for a lot of these guys, because what you sit with is, by law, you need to sell electricity on a certain tariff and a certain structure, and it can become very expensive. And if a tenant sees a few panels, he's like, okay, well, let's all share in that one panel's savings. But it doesn't work that way, because the energy required for an entire shopping mall is not necessarily, you don't necessarily have the space to put up panels to provide energy for all of that. So with the great benefits is there's also a lot of challenges that landlords face because of this job. And just on a practical note there, I spoke to one of the landlords at one of the places, and we were talking about, and they're like, yes, but everybody wants renewables. And imagine if 120 tenants all want access to your roof, all climbing up and down your roof, and each one has got their own little system, and you've got people coming in and out, and every other day there's somebody else walking on here and going there. It is just not practical. I think it's going to be an evolving and changing environment in the next couple of years. And I think there's things that needs to catch up, and there's practical implications. For example, if somebody uses renewable energy and a bit of diesel because the power was out for a few days and municipal power, how do you build that? Remembering that if a landlord installs renewables, there's a real cost to them. So in other words, they've now taken out 15 million rand to put up solar and inverters at a very large shopping center.
Absolutely.
Yes, they are saving money on their energy bill. They absolutely are. But they still have a 15 million rand that they need to pay off and that they need to get back. So it's one of these complexities that we need to understand. But I think the conversation needs to be had, the conversation between tenants and landlords and utilities, and to do it in a way where we strive towards what is best for all.
Absolutely, and most times they stuck with an investment in a property.
Yes.
But Tommy, what do you refer to when talking about solar investment?
Municipalities are losing money and they are not getting the recoveries they used to get. The shortcuts to this is charge massive basic rates and give electricity away for free almost. So if you are a middle-class household, if you give us 10,000 rand a month, you can almost use uncapped electricity. The problem is that municipalities are looking for shortcuts, and the renewable protections or investment protections is to always have the right to have renewable sources, to generate your own electricity, because it is the right thing to do. And at the same time, have a tariff structure that is cost-based, not budget-based. Because if it's cost-based, the cost of electricity would ideally, with a good governance, improve from municipalities, not to run away. So if the municipality does it correctly, the ideal scenario would be in 10 years that the municipalities and Eskom pull up their socks and they do everything in their power to reduce the cost of energy, where if it comes time to replace your current panels or your current system, you're like, okay, but I don't need to, because the cost and the reliability of my local utility is of such a high performance that I can just buy it from them and it's efficient and abundant and so on. So that is where the municipalities and Eskom needs to be striving, not this cost war where they're like, okay, if you're going to go left, we're going to charge you for going left. And that just doesn't make sense, and it's not
in the perfect world.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But Tommy, you've been very vocal about a single national tariff. Why is this important?
So, yeah, when I say that, I'm referring to a tariff structure. So, again, not one tariff for everybody, a tariff structure so that
The
it
one
is,
size fits all doesn't work.
yes, so that it is well thought out. So, yes, the less you use, the more you pay per unit, but within reason and within scale. Exactly the same if you think of any economic principle, but that it's not a thing of, okay, you're paying uh, £2.20 per kilowatt hour a year when you're an Eskom customer, but £6 something if you're a municipal customer in this municipality or so on. It's just so out of whack. So if you have a single tariff structure, and again, remember, municipalities pay based on a very large consumption, especially the metros. So if they're paying £1.80 for their electricity per kilowatt hour, and they are legally allowed to recover £2.20, there's a 40 cents over recovery
Yeah.
on every kilowatt hour they sell. There is an over recovery, and there is a 20% or a 23% markup built in the tariff. So instead of telling each municipality, you know what, just base it on your budget and see how much you need, there's a single set of tariffs for everyone. And this will also, I think, drastically help the smaller communities and municipalities where you can put business back there. I think we need a refocus on revitalizing a lot of the smaller municipalities, the town centers and the industrial consumers and so on and so forth. And a single tariff structure would at least allow customers to go there and then to go and do business again there at the same cost that they would have paid at elsewhere. So ironically, the cheapest electricity in the country is in Sandton. So just because they're Eskom direct. And then municipalities right next to it. So City Power, which is next to it, and Ekurhuleni that's next to it, and City of Tshwane that's next to it, has got some of the most expensive electricity in the country. So you could be paying £2.20 a kilowatt hour in Eskom because you're in Sandton, or £5 because you are in City Power. But those can be 2 kilometers away from each other, and that is just ridiculous. That is, yeah, that is
At times
bonkers.
even separated by a street,
Yes.
and I think the biggest thing is that with inaccurate metering and stuff, the metros are basing budgets around inaccurate figures. So if we could put a stop to a lot of these issues that we've already discussed, I think the need for massive budgets and a proper cost-effective structure would definitely work out. But if we think about the service delivery and accountability, how do we hold Eskom and municipalities accountable for service delivery?
I think, again, we must realize that there are very decent people working for Eskom and working for municipalities. There are real people with real jobs whose kids goes to school that have their own financial constraints and so on that try their best. But there's such a wasteful nature in government, and there are so many examples of this. If you go and buy today's newspaper, no matter when you look at this video, you're going to find some municipality that did some corruption and nothing was done about it. So it's one of those things where this will also impact those individuals. We can't afford to lose a single job, but we need to make sure that those people employed to do that job has the ability to do it, has accountability to do it, and that they actually go out and do it. Because there are so many examples of money being spent on upgrading infrastructure that never gets upgraded. Money that gets spent on replacing cables that was stolen by said company just last week. They go and steal the cables and come and replace them. And there are people that's milking the system because there's no control. Unfortunately, we are at a point where we need serious org and police and army protection to get to a point where these people are taken to task and where the corruption doesn't run away. Because if that is allowed to go on, then that will be the nail in the coffin for all municipalities, because eventually the municipality will collapse. And we are at the point where most of the municipalities are at the point of collapse, where the infrastructure is not well maintained, the billing systems, the wheels are coming off, the metering is not accurate. So it's something that we need to have a look at and ask for that accountability. Alternatively, I foresee a future, and this is just me, this is not, well, hopefully other people, but I foresee a future where we are going to move away from municipalities and almost go in the midstream direction, where you've got a single point for an entire community. And where this can be duplicated. I think one of the examples that is in the media recently quite a lot is places like Orania or places like Plainfontein. One of the things that I do believe that no matter where you are as a South African, that can be taken away from that is, if a community takes control over the utilities and the infrastructure and the services, and they do it correctly without corruption, there is not just money to be made, but lives are improved. And I think that model, if that can be reproduced, I think we can live in an amazing country. I already think we live in an amazing country, but I think that can benefit all.
Yeah, I think, with proper legislation where, penalties can be imposed for non-performance, I think that's going to go a long way. And like you say, the knowledge is here somewhere. But
yes,
without legislation and penalties being imposed, there's no call to action for things to start changing and turning in the right direction. Am I correct in saying that you've provided NERSA with a proposal regarding failing municipalities?
Yes, so I've actually been involved since 2019, where I did a proposal for Kokta, and I've done numerous proposals for NERSA. And one of the things that's interesting, in the law, all electricity charges needs to be ring-fenced by all municipalities, but they are not.
Okay.
If you go onto NERSA's website, all the laws are there, the regulations, the cost of supply studies that needs to be done, the forms that needs to be handed in, so many regulations that the municipalities need to adhere to, but they're not. So as part of this, it is really simple. It's a simple thing of making sure that, first of all, electricity income and expense is ring-fenced, as it should be by law. So in other words, it is not electricity income that's used to pave roads and so on and so forth, or electricity income that is used to pay the MM's new house and his cars and so on and so forth. It is electricity ring-fenced for electricity. And then when you've got this ring fenced, like you said, metering is of utmost importance. How much electricity are we buying versus how much are we selling? Close that gap, close wasteful expenditure, and then make sure while you're doing that, that a portion of that electricity is always spent on maintenance. So that customer that I spoke to about earlier, that sat without electricity, unfortunately this year they were without electricity again for 28 days. And the irony is that the entire substation burned down. So these customers, they had 4 20 megawatt transformers, protection, switch gear, ring main units, everything for all of these customers. They ended up losing almost everything, and they are now left with 1 20 megawatt transformer, a single RMU, and very little protection. And the problem here was because the municipality didn't spend, let's say, around about 1.5 million rand on protection, they had to spend something like 50 to 60 million rand on that new transformer and just getting that working. So if they spent 1.5 million rand, 50, 60 million rand could have been saved. And many municipalities are currently at that point where if you spend 10 million, you can save 90. Because if you do protection correctly, then you can isolate the fault. But if that's not the case,
absolutely,
then to give you an idea, this fault started in the township. Then it ran through the switchgear and the mini subs of the township. then that protection didn't work. Then it ran through the lines and it went through the ring main unit. From there on in, it went through the transformers up to 88 kV. Then from there on in, it went through the power lines of the municipality. It went all the way back to the substation of the entire municipality, and it eventually tripped at Eskom. The only protection that worked there was Eskom's, after the entire distribution's protection failed. If they had the correct protection installed and working inside the first mini sub, none of this would have happened. So again, it's looking at things of low-hanging fruit, saying let's ring fence this, and if we've got 10 million rand this month for this municipality, where can we spend that 10 million rand to increase our protection as quickly as possible, to make sure that when we have faults now because of lack of maintenance, that it's isolated and that it's not a runaway cost. And then after the protection is up to date, then we start rolling this and saying, okay, what is the thing that needs to be updated the most until we can get back to having infrastructure to be proud of again and have redundancies and additional layers of protection in our infrastructure.
Absolutely. I think it's where's the money best used now and to have the most amount of savings and impact. Tommy, I think we've touched on so many different issues today. We're definitely going to need to get you back in. But what would your message be for landlords listening today?
So I think the most important thing is become part of the voice. You have an absolute power to be part of the solution here. And I think sometimes it feels overwhelming. And make sure that you educate yourself, and because renewables, again, is not the answer. It is pointless you have a few solar panels, but the entire system collapses around you. So be part of the solution, and make sure that you know what's going on, and that you attend all the hearings, and that you know when your voice can be heard. And if it's not, that we take a collective effort and say, well, let's combat this, and let's make sure that the cost of energy can go down for all of us, to ensure that we've got businesses to come back to, not just next year, but in 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years. So yeah, I think that would be that.
Great stuff. We really appreciate it, Tommy. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thanks for being part of the Utilities Decoder.